Welcome to the news for the week of 8 November 2020. How about that? Today, Ultimate Member, WordPress, Turisma, Gmob, Don't Press the Green Button, Hyperloop, and Josh Harr from Rapid7. Should be fun, so stick around.
This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. Increased attacks, skill gaps, talent shortages, expanding attack surfaces. Cybersecurity and IT teams face these real issues every day. CyberArray for Teams is the #1 NIST-aligned DoD 8140 and 8570 compliance certification and skills training platform. CyberArray for Teams makes managing teams easier, guarantees measurable training outcomes, and keeps your team's skills sharp to meet today's biggest security threats. And did you know 96% of the Fortune 500 have employees training on CyberArray? CyberArray for Teams. Now you know. Visit cyberarray.it/solved to solve your team training challenges.
Yay, it's the news. All right, so a fake ad for Microsoft Teams Update is making the rounds. Imagine that. It has primarily been focused on K-12 education institution, and it uses Cobalt Strike. So apparently and Microsoft released this in a non-public way. Well, it's public now, guys, but a non-public warning. I don't know what that means, but anyway, they released it apparently to Bleeping Computer, and it's called the Fake Updates Campaign. So apparently back in 2019, there was a whole campaign around this about update your Microsoft Office Now that was dropping Doppelpaymer on people's systems, but they just recently reintroduced this, and now it's using Wasted Locker. So it's still kind of an older ransomware platform, but I guess all that's been updated, all new and improved. Wasted Locker. It's like, get yours today. So the modern version of this particular dropper uses signatures for the binaries, and it is essentially now a real framework. So it has second stage payloads, the whole works. So the ads primarily use search engine poisoning, fake ads, just straight up fake ads, and all kinds of other things to get people to, of course, click the link. They have also apparently used SOC Golish framework, so that's another one. And that one in particular was exploiting the zero logon issue that we've talked ad nauseum about. But the framework has so far included, there's so much piece of this, just like all these frameworks. It's got Predator the Thief, which is an info stealer if you haven't seen that one, Bladabindi, and Zloader, which are all basically background information stealers that are being put on there. So the secondary payloads now seem to be primarily including Cobalt Strike, which of course is a very useful secondary payload. And there's not a lot you can do about it, really, because most of this is just basically phishing. So I don't know why Microsoft chose to, I guess because it's not really a Microsoft issue, so they put it out there as a non-public, non-public, public. Why do you go tell Bleeping Computer if it's non-public, and why is it not? I don't know. Anyway, enough. Ultimate Member. Sounds like the next Austin Powers movie. Ultimate Member is a plugin on WordPress, if you've not seen it, that is on more than 100,000 WordPress sites currently. It has 3 critical bugs that were released, which basically all 3 allow privilege escalation of some sort. None of these actually had CVEs assigned to them as of this morning when I got that article, but 2 of them are reputedly 10 out of 10, and the other one is a 9.9. So I guess pretty bad. I mean, anytime you got easy privilege escalation on WordPress, it's a pretty bad problem. One of the attacks basically relies on arbitrary meta keys. So basically, this means that you can push as you register a new user, you can push a meta key that basically says this should be an admin. and it gets around. I guess it gets around the controls somehow. There weren't all those details. The second one is another way to supply a role parameter. So the same thing. So you're just sort of pushing that meta information in as you register that user, and that one let you get a higher level or a different level of privilege. And the third one is a lack of capability checking, which means that you can update a profile that already exists and boost your privilege level too. So all of them will allow for potential takeover of your WordPress, which is the really important part. So if you're using Ultimate Member, you might want to consider using it very carefully and think about how you may want to get around that. But then again, if you're using WordPress plugins, which you probably are, you're probably also aware that they're all pretty common attack vectors, and hopefully you're dealing with some way to control this, right? I mean, you are, right? I mean, your WordPress site is safe. So, okay. If you need a minute, go ahead, but that's okay. A website which was set up by President Donald Trump's campaign is called don'tpressthegreenbutton.com. And it was claiming that it had news reports on election irregularities in Maricopa County, which is in Arizona. But apparently it was not very well set up, and essentially it contained SQL injection vulnerabilities and also contained other vulnerabilities, which when the person who was working on this did it, was able to see the records of about 163,000 voters that were on there. Todd Rosen was the researcher. He said he discovered this by accident, and he published all his findings on Reddit. So always a source of reliable information. But doesn't surprise me. People setting up servers on the fly quickly a lot of times neglect to set up security and or assessments of those servers. And so I know whoever was setting this server up was probably trying to get up and running, since all this has happened in the last week. So they probably didn't bother to to pen test it or check out to make sure that it was set up. And who knows? But SQL injections, yay. North Korean attackers used a tool called Turisma to collect data on Australian, Israeli, Russian, and other defense contractors in Russia and India. The tools were found by McAfee, and they called it Operation North Star. They didn't say why. You have to have names like that for all these kind of things, or they just don't sound cool. It's like Operation North Star. You never hear them name it something like, we're just going to call this one like Buddy. It's always something like, Operation Infinite Perpetude. But anyway, Turisma apparently was placed on systems via both social media sites, a lot of fake job offers, that's always a hook, and other weaponized documents, as well as spear phishing attacks. Standard operating procedure. According to McAfee, the behavior and the tactics of these seem to indicate it's yet another hidden Cobra action from North Korea. Turisma, if you're unfamiliar with it, basically collects data about the user on their device and the system that they're using for possible later exploitation. So they're basically farming probably credentials and so forth. And I guess, targeting people that are looking for jobs in the defense industry might be, profitable for North Koreans. So, watch out for that if you're doing those things, and, be careful about those job offers that sound a little bit too good to be true. Gmob is I don't know how to say it, but it's Ghimob. Gmob, I guess, is an Android banking Trojan from Brazil, which and the Brazilian group that put this together is called Guildma, and I don't know how to say that in Portuguese. Sorry, I know I live in Rhode Island. I ought to be able to speak Portuguese, but I'm sorry, Rhode Islanders. But it basically targets Android phones. And it's basically another in the long series of banking Trojans that target mobile devices that primarily collect data from apps and overlay attacks on mobile devices. So this one is no different. It goes after financial apps primarily. It does have other apps that it targets. And primarily right now, it has been targeting Brazil, Paraguay, Peru, Portugal, Germany, Angola, and Mozambique. So for an eclectic collection of targets, there you go. I'm guessing those are places where there's like these same financial companies. The Trojan basically allows the attackers access, so it can actually let them have backdoor access to the device at a high privilege level, and it allows them to conduct fraudulent transactions, of course, which is what we're usually looking for with financial attacks. And they can circumvent security protections, including multi-factor, because of the overlay components and other backend things, and it's running, with your privilege. Basically, the Trojans install with a malicious URL. I mean, nothing new there, and it downloads the installer onto the phone, and of course, then you approve it and say, yeah, sure, go ahead. Gmob can record screen actions for later use, and as such, one of the things that it's capable of doing is capturing those screen lock patterns that they have on Android phones by using that kind of an overlay attack. So it can capture that and then use it to activate services. The Trojan targets 112 financial institutions, and it also targets other mobile applications on those phones. This next article was an interesting article. It's less news and more just of general interest, but it's talking about how hackers blend attacks to bypass MFA. It's commentary, but I still found it pretty interesting. Basically, Alan is talking about multi-stage attacks like Kerberos, which can grant access to developer options on an Android phone. And then once you have those developer options, you can use that with a second stage to extract two-factor credentials and so forth, a lot like this Gmob thing that we were just looking at. And the story goes on to talk about reverse engineering and a whole series of attack vectors that are focused on by bypassing multi-factor on mobile devices. I actually found this story because I was reading that previous story and I was just looking for some other related stuff like that. I always worry because, we talk to management and we hear management say things like, this is the solution to all our problems. And anytime I hear them say that, they're often focusing so heavily on a holy grail type solution. And we really need to keep reiterating that defense in depth is a way of life. And it's not just a buzzword till you get the next buzzword from the marketing people saying, oh, yeah, all you really need is two-factor authentication and all your dreams will come true. But we hear that a lot. In the same light, iOS updated to 14.2. They were patching 3 0 days. This was last week, but I wanted to re-mention it because I really felt like it was important to cover these 0 days. And basically, because they're being actively exploited. So Project Zero was who reported this. They escalated their reporting on this. They usually don't report for 90 days, but they said that since this was being actively exploited, they were going to go ahead and report it. And so Apple did release an update to that last week. So if you haven't done that yet, you may want to. Project Zero has really been cranking out the notification lately, and they've had a lot of new 0 days that have been released since October 20th. I did want to save time to talk to my guest today. When we return, Josh Harr from Rapid7 is going to join us, and we're going to talk about leadership, being open-minded in hiring, and some other exciting topics, so hang around for that.
Do you know where your organization's crown jewel data is, whose data it is, what it contains, and if it's flagged, tagged, and classified accurately? Defense in Depth requires discovery in depth. At Big ID, they help organizations uncover dark data, classify sensitive and regulated data, meet compliance requirements, and take action for data on-prem, in the cloud, and everywhere in between. Learn more about how Discovery in-depth can change the way enterprise organizations find, classify, and protect sensitive data at securityweekly.com/Big ID.
All right, we're back, and we've got Josh Harr. He's a senior advisory consultant for Rapid7. We've known Rapid7s all the way back to when they were like Rapid 2, we've had them around. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Thanks, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you could join us and show your guitars and banjos and things off. And that's always that's a common backdrop these days. I mean, haven't you noticed that? I see a lot of people with guitars, and it's an interesting way to learn about people.
Listen, cybersecurity is boring for most of the time, so got to give something to look at other than this space.
Yeah, sometimes you have to kind of take a break and do something like play the guitar, because I remember doing a forensics case where I had to catalog like 31,000 porn pictures, and literally, it was just like click, okay, yeah, click, okay, because we were just looking for certain pictures, and it was just like nope. And after about an hour of that, you're like, okay, I'm gonna play the guitar for a few minutes. I'm just tired of looking at this. So one of the questions I was gonna ask you was how did you get to being to the point where you were a senior advisory consultant anyway? I mean, that's a cool sounding job title.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. I I really spent a lot of time working in the tactical level of cybersecurity, being an analyst, being a threat hunter. I have to say that if it was there were a lot of good mentors along the way that really helped me out. It goes all the way back to my very first manager, and he gave me a shot. I came right out of active duty Air Force and finishing my master's degree in cybersecurity, and he gave me a shot to show
the Air Force really ramped up on cyber. I mean that was I always remember like the first person I met in forensics that was like military that really impressed me was Rob Lee, and I was like, wow, this guy's from the Air Force, which that wasn't something I associated with like cyber, at the time. I mean, no offense to the Air Force, but it was just kind of like, you don't think about that when you think about the Air Force. And then all of a sudden there was all these great people coming out of the Air Force.
Hey, Rob's my hero. I met him once. He probably doesn't even remember me, but he is my ultimate hero when it comes to industrial control systems and what he's doing in that area and that realm is by far some of the best work.
Yeah, he's great. I've met him quite a number of times and worked with him on a couple of projects and things. So it was he's definitely a cool guy, and he always impressed me so much because it was just kind of like, wow, made me feel like an idiot. So I was, which is good. I actually enjoy that. It sounds weird, but it's like I really actually like being around people that are a lot smarter than I am because it keeps you up, makes you keep trying. It's like the pacing rabbit at the dog race or whatever. And yeah, I went to a dog race once.
Yeah, no, it was. I'm very grateful for the Air Force that got me here, and now I'm still serving in the reserves as a cyber warfare officer, and kind of double dipping there. Really like to play with the cool toys there, and helping organizations with their security strategies. That's something that a lot of people don't know about Rapid7 is, we have a lot of really cool tools and toys. I would always say toys, but really where we fit in is coming in and really helping organizations build their security strategy. And that's really very just rewarding for me.
That's yeah. I mean, I agree. So you do a lot of like IR and strategy planning. Is that right? I mean, that's one of your roles there. What does that mean? I mean, I know that some of the people watching the show are like experts in the field, but other people watching the show range from high school students to. So tell us what that means a little bit.
Yeah, so security strategy and what we'll do is we'll work with leaders within an organization, and we'll work with a framework, because kind of pulling security out of thin air is not really the best way to do it. There's best practices out there. The CIS 20, NIST has a bunch. We've done PCI, we've done HIPAA, but really starting with a framework and seeing how those controls can be implemented within an organization that's, number one, efficient, effective, and doesn't really break the bank. We're very we don't push a tool. We're very tool agnostic in this area, but we can say, hey, this tool would be great, whether it's a VM or whether it's a SIM. You should do this. You should implement something like this. But also it builds around these policies and procedures that need to happen. Specifically with IR, incident response, I was fortunate enough to work for a utilities organization as a manager of incident response. And my biggest hope was that my analysts, my incident responders, were not relying just on their brain power to get through a response, because if we could write it down and we could make those procedures, those playbooks, those run books, that means they can not miss a beat and have everything done, have all the information needed without having to go back and almost be redundant in trying to build that scope out within the IR process.
And I mean, that's a very military thing to do. I mean, I've been espousing that as long as I've been in this field, which was, one of the things that at least the Navy always said was, if it happens once, it's an anomaly. If it happens twice, you need a procedure for it. Yeah. And I kept saying that about security all along, because I want my analysts looking at the anomalies, but I want everything else to be a procedure that's going to happen. So, I mean, how do you sell that to management? Because that was always one of the things I found was the most challenging thing. Because when you go to management, they just sort of basically go, "We'll take a bunch of nerds and throw them in the basement, and they'll take care of all our problems." But it doesn't really work that way in real life. I mean, taking 2 Uber hackers and sticking them in the basement of the building isn't going to protect you from cyber threats.
Yeah, and I mean, threat hunting is fun, but that's the probably most fun that you can do on the defensive side. Everything else is procedures, like you said earlier, with multi-factor authentication. Defense in depth is a layered process. It has to be layered. A lot of folks have seen. They said, "All right, we're going to go with a new NIST standard of 16 characters, and it's a passphrase, and then we don't have to expire our passwords, and so our users can have a more convenient way to work." And that's not all. NIST came out with that standard, but I still believe multi-factor, it needs to be a layer on there, and then you have to have other access controls going forward.
Yes.
It's boring to try to think of those things. We're not. It's not flashy all the time.
But you also need people to keep looking at it, because, again, like I was saying earlier, all too often you hear management say, "Oh, so all we need to do is have a 16-character password. It's got a letter, a number, a symbol, and a case change, and we're good, right?" No, we need multi-factor. Okay, we got multi-factor. We're good, right? No further problems. And we know that that's not true.
The cyber terrain, plane, whatever you call it, is evolving so quickly that if you're not staying on your toes and you're not keeping the board or your stakeholders informed from a risk perspective, that's another point that we really kind of hone in on, is like, is your business risk informing your information security risk, and vice versa? And if it's not, then you have a disconnect, and that's where the board has no earthly idea what information security does for the organization. And information security doesn't really know what the business does. And those types of things need to be married to an extent, so that you have this better cycle of informed and evolved landscape of what your organization is threatened with. And it's going to be different from a healthcare organization to industrial control systems to finance and the like. It's going to be completely different, and you have to look at it. You have to constantly reassess yearly, if not twice every year.
Well, yeah, and one other thing I think you mentioned there several times that I'm going to sort of flip it around a little. You were saying about, we have to have a real organized plan. But one of the other pieces of it is that there is a lot of uncertainty and change in the model. And one of the criticisms of the military, and I don't want to talk about the military because we can't change the military here, but in terms of corporate, I see the same thing, which is the military has a very sort of structure around who we're going to take. It's a self-select, so that's part of it, because there's people that would not join the military. And then the military has its own set of, drop and give me 20 mega, kind of F. Lee Ermey, model of behavior that doesn't appeal, again, to a lot of people. So in a company, and I've seen this in companies too, they have very rigid, very, this is, cut your hair, son. I remember being told that before. And I was told I worked for an organization that was like, take the earrings out. I was like, what? And they were, I had all these earrings, and they were like, you have to take the earrings out. And I was like, why? what does that got to do with it? But it was like, do you want to work here? Take them out. How do we get around that? I mean, there's a good person may have a tattoo on their face that says hello or something.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of we're missing a lot of perspectives within the security realm. Diversity is limited right now, and we really need to build that diverse perspective. I have a wonderful opportunity with folks that I've come in contact with to say they literally come up to me and say, "Hey, Josh, how do I get in cybersecurity? You're so passionate. Like, how do I do it?" And I have a great opportunity and great platform to say, "Hey, let's build a framework for you to get to where you want to be within cybersecurity." And when it comes to auto mechanics, when it comes to janitors, when it comes to teachers, people that are displaced because of COVID, we're still seeing a huge increase in hiring because cybersecurity is not going away. But it really starts with our mentality of hiring. Who are we going to hire? Do we have to? There are no unicorns out there, and if I get on my soapbox, I'll never get off. But to the organizations that are asking for a entry-level cybersecurity analyst with CISP in 4 years education, it's an entry-level role. CISP is a management level role.
Yeah.
CISP is like 10 years down the road. Like let's start with maybe Security Plus, or maybe do you have a passion for computers? Start there. You can teach the technical. You can't teach the drive. You can't teach the people who want to be there. And if recruiters are still chasing the money and not the quality, we're going to still be fishing out of the same barrel that we've been fishing in for the past 10 years. So you're going to have analysts move from one organization to the next because of money. And that's because they're probably the best qualified and the recruiters can make a good commission out of it. Now, I'm not saying all recruiters are like that, and I don't want to put generalizations in there, but we need to start looking outside the barrel of fish that we already have, because auto mechanics know a system in an automobile. They know where brake fluid should go. They also know where it shouldn't go. They know where oil should be. They know where wiper fluid should not be. They know a system. So you put them in front of an abstract model or a network diagram that says, "Hey, this is the traffic that needs to go from this server to this server." They're gonna understand that. Yeah, it's gonna take a little bit of time to take that tactical and that mindset, that physical mindset that they have already, and move it into a more abstract knowledge set. But you give them a chance, and the average salary for a cybersecurity analyst is like $65,000 to $70,000. Anybody who is able to take that job is going to be great. Is going to feel great because they took a chance on a brand new person and giving them a new career, as well as they're going to see a return of investment, because average is 8 to 18 months a security analyst stays in a role, and companies are losing money off of that.
Yeah.
If they're not there for more than 2 years, the company's lost money.
Well,
So-
you have to take care of people too, and training and all that kind of stuff. I do think that one of the words that you said is a word I use a lot, which is passion, and that's something I always look for when I do recruiting for people. I'm always looking for somebody who is excited to talk about what they're talking about. And when I asked them, we were talking about questions that I've asked people in interviews on Security Weekly last week, and one of my questions about what's your favorite networking port and why was I always told people I could tell so much about the candidate from their answer to that question. Not that there's a right answer or wrong answer, but when people go, what's a networking port versus somebody who's like, wow, let me see, how about 443? Oh, that's a good one, but 23 would probably be my old time favorite one. But you can just tell from the way people talk about stuff that they're into it, and that's the person who's going to make a great analyst.
I had the great opportunity. I was extremely grateful. One of an acquaintance of mine had been displaced. He got a master's degree in physiological sciences. He owned his own business, and then COVID hit, and literally had nothing. And he called me up and said, Josh, how do I get into cybersecurity? We spent maybe 2 months working. He worked his butt off, studying for Security Plus, and last week just passed it. I mean, this guy had zero security knowledge from a cyber perspective and from any formal education, and he's now Security Plus certified, and people are calling him left and right now. It's great.
That's awesome.
Absolutely am so happy for him.
That's great.
And that's what we need. We need people to go out and reach into the pool of perspective, and because they're going to see something that we don't. I'm in cybersecurity. I have narrowed my vision. I've got tunnel vision sometimes. And sometimes all we need is a little bit more of perspective, a little bit of a different perspective. Cool. And, we need hiring managers to take a chance. We need businesses to take a chance. And we need recruiters to go outside of the pool, not for the money, but for the chance to change somebody's life. And that's what I think cybersecurity can do. It can change people's lives. It changed mine. So
cool.
There's a lot to go to unpack in that, but definitely.
All right. Well, thank you, Josh Harr from Rapid 7, a guy who's not afraid to admit he owns a banjo. And finally, Virgin Hyperloop claims that they will be able to move you around the planet at over 600 miles per hour. And they did the first test with actual live humans, probably interns. They call them volunteers, but, that's usually when you're going, I don't know, they might live, they might die. You go, hey, you guys were looking for a chance, right? Hop in there. It's perfectly safe. Their 500-meter-long test track is just north of Las Vegas, and they accelerated the volunteers to 107 miles per hour in 6.25 seconds, which is really not that much, really. But instead of turning into a fine pink jelly, the volunteers were fine. And so who knows, maybe one day we could travel from New York to DEF CON and call it, 4 hours on the Hyperloop. That would be really cool until you get on the local instead of the express, and it takes like 12 hours, and they keep stopping at weird places. But I will tell you from doing that, it's fun to get off at stops you don't know. Just get off. Well, I used to do that in Manhattan all the time and ride a train. I would pick somebody, I would follow them until they got off the train. And I would just get off at the stop they got off and just walk around and see what was there. I did that in Moscow, actually. I was by myself. I was just riding the subway train in Moscow. I just picked a guy at random. I said, I'm just going to, when this guy gets off the train, I'm going to get off the train. And I got off at the stop Elektrozavodka, which was my favorite Russian word. It means light bulb. But it was a super cool Art Deco station. It was really awesome. So I encourage you to try that. Don't follow them home. That gets a little weird. But, just when they get off the train too. But anyway, it can always be fun. And that's the news for now in the time of plague. I'm Doug White. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Security Weekly News. Voting is over, so now we can just focus on some facts. We'll see you again on Friday for the Security Weekly News wrap-up.